So welcome back to another episode of Saturday Huddle. And today I am joined by the wonderful and fabulous founder of SEC Pretty, Joy. How are you doing today, Joy?
I'm great, Emily. So happy to be here. Love talking football with you. It's literally one of my favorite things to do.
I love talking football with you, and I am super excited to preview the SEC.
Of
And
course.
I can't wait to hear your thoughts and ideas and opinions, your hot takes, everything for what you think is in store for this upcoming season. So, obviously, there are some pretty big storylines heading into this season, and your school is pretty much at the heart of a lot of them. First and
Correct.
foremost, I want to hear your thoughts. How do you feel about Lane Kiffin being your head coach?
I love it. And not for maybe the reasons like people would assume I would love it. Like, obviously, you want your head coach to come in and win games. Like, that's important to you. But I
Yeah.
think something that like the media and other fans probably like aren't considering is the fact that it has been an absolutely miserable experience to be an LSU fan for the last 4 years. Brian Kelly completely sucked the life out of not just our program, but our fan base. Like, you saw such a collapse in attendance. You saw a massive collapse in donations because he was not someone that we enjoyed leading our program. And so I am optimistic, if nothing else, that it's going to be fun to be an LSU fan again. And as a fan base that prides ourselves on always having a good time and always enjoying the experience of being an LSU football fan, having that taken away from us, I think we all realize like how much that was a big reason we supported LSU and went to school there and loved the place so much. And so, yeah,
Right.
I mean, I think he's going to be great on the football field, but I'm just as excited, if not more excited, for the joy he's going to return to our program.
Absolutely. He is always kind of like that entertainment element too,
For
right? So
sure.
it's kind of fun when you have a coach that participates and not just coaching football, but kind of everything that comes with it, whether people like to realize that or not. Like I know
Yeah.
sometimes people are like, "Oh, that coach is online too much, like too active on social media, doing too much." Well, that connecting with people within and outside of the program is kind of part of the deal, whether people
No
realize
doubt about it. And he says
so.
that. He's like, we've had
Yeah,
parents come in of recruits and say, like, I feel like I already know you because of how you are on
right.
social media. And I'm
Right.
like, as much as y'all don't want to like it, like that's a recruiting advantage that your coach isn't doing. So
Totally. And so I definitely think there's some benefit there. And I think I can speak for the majority of college football fans, if not all of them. We're definitely excited for your game against Ole Miss.
I'm sure you are. So everyone is, I
I feel
feel
like
like.
that's come up probably in every episode I've done is we have to talk about LSU versus Ole Miss.
Yeah.
So
I'm
that
honestly
is,
ready. I'm kind of ready for it to be over because I'm
I'm
just
sure.
like, that's
I'm
the
sure.
narrative we've heard since Lane took the job. Like, you
Of
can't
course.
watch. I mean, they're talking. I was watching SEC Media Days this morning. They're talking about it. I'm like, guys, there's other schools in this conference. Like, let's talk about them.
Yeah, I'm sure because I know if my team was kind of at this in the spotlight like that in such a way, I would be wanting that game to be over already.
No
So
doubt.
I absolutely get it. So kind of taking a look at the other schools in the conference, I would love to get your thoughts on a few different things. So who do you think enters the season as the team to beat in the SEC? Because, and I'm going to preface with this, obviously, I'm not, my team's not in the SEC, but I find the SEC to be incredibly intriguing kind of going into the season because I feel like there are so many good things going on with
Mhm.
many teams and so many exciting new things going on with some teams. LSU is a great example of that. So it's kind of it's pointing to look like a pretty fascinating conference as always, but kind of, your own point of view, who enters the season as the team to beat in the conference.
I think for me, until they're not, Georgia will always be the team to beat now.
Yeah.
They have taken the helm, and I just find it so fascinating that people have just decided to crown Texas like the team to beat in the SEC because
Yeah.
I don't know how everyone has just completely decided to disrespect Kirby Smart and what he's built at Georgia. It's so odd because I felt like that transition from it being Alabama to it then being Georgia was so clear cut. And then Texas shows up and everyone's like, oh no, like we have to give them their credit. And I'm like, why? Like,
Yeah.
what have they done that, they went to Sanford last year, lost to Georgia. Georgia puts on probably one of the most dominant SEC championship performances we've ever seen come out of the conference. So the idea that it would be anyone but Georgia at this point in time is mind boggling to me. Until someone decides to dethrone them, and I mean like legitimately dethrone them, I mean like go ahead and win a couple natties and we can talk about it. Georgia and Kirby Smart for me are the team to beat.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you. I do feel like Texas kind of entered the conference and immediately became that team. And, while they have shown some promise, it's really hard to ignore Georgia's overall dominance and the fact that they've been doing it in the SEC for so long,
Correct.
well before Texas ever joined. So, yeah. Absolutely feel you on that. And kind of taking a look at the expanded playoff, where do you think LSU fits into that and the championship conversation?
I don't know if they do. And that I understand is a very hot take for a lot of people because everyone sits here and goes, you paid Lane all this money and you spent all this money on the roster, and immediately, if Lane comes in and doesn't make the playoff and doesn't compete for a national championship, this is a failure. I've never been that kind of fan, and I will never be that kind of fan. Do I expect success sooner than I have in previous decades of watching LSU? Sure. The landscape of college football is different. You are heavily dependent on the portal. Lane has consistently proven the fact that he can build a team around the portal. He did it at Ole Miss last year. We know that he's capable of that. My prediction for LSU is 9-3, which a lot of people think if he doesn't win 10 wins, it's a failure. I wholeheartedly disagree. With the expanded playoff, a 9-3 SEC team can get in. Now, whether or not they do is going to be dependent on a lot of other factors outside of our conference's control. And so, yeah, I think if they go 9-3 and the chips fall where they may and they make the playoff, then that's incredible, especially for a year one turnaround. But I am not impatient, and I'm not so naive as to believe that a season, like his first season without playoff berth, would be a failure.
Yeah, I definitely think that's an unfair statement. I mean, I think there is naturally a learning curve, even if we don't want to label it like that, with any coach going to a new school, you kind of have to have that grace period. College footballs aren't really good with patience or anything about a
No,
grace period. So, of course, they're like immediate success or this was a failure. But
exactly.
I'm definitely with you. I feel like he can have still a pretty successful and strong first year at LSU without making it deep into the playoffs, without making it into the playoffs. But that doesn't necessarily mean this entire thing was a failure.
Correct.
So that's a really good expectation. I think a really fair expectation of LSU. What are the biggest question marks around LSU right now?
I mean, obviously, we don't know anything about this current roster outside of the stars that we had last year. So Trey Green is going to show up and stand out. We always called him. He is like a permanent pass interference call. Like if you need a PI call, you throw the ball to Trey Green because he's just so large that they pretty much always have to commit PI if they want to stop him. Whit Weeks is going to be phenomenal on the defensive side of the ball. I think the defensive side of the ball is probably where we all feel the most comfortable. We were able to retain Blake Baker. You got a lot of your ballers back. You got DJ Pickett back. So you have some stars on that side of the ball. I think the offensive side of the ball is obviously where you have the most questions. You have Sam Levitt. You're wondering how healthy he's going to be. Is he going to be able to sling the ball the way he was doing it at Arizona State? And so I think our offense is my biggest question. Maybe even our offensive line. Garrett Nussmeier caught a lot of flack last season. Obviously, looking back now, it was very clear that he was being a scapegoat for the current staff or previous staff that didn't want to acknowledge their shortcomings. You realize that when he went to the Senior Bowl and balled out, and then obviously found out about, some major injuries and some major physical issues that he had been dealing with all fall that were never acknowledged. And he also wasn't put in a position to make great plays because his offensive line was abysmal. And so I think if you are able, or if Lane is able to go in and really prioritize the offensive line, which he did in the portal, you watch that happen. And if Sam Levitt is 70%, your offense should be pretty successful. But we don't know. We haven't seen this offense ever. This is not the same offense they ran last year. This is not Trinidad Shambliss we're talking about. So there's a lot of confidence in knowing what Lane has previously produced on the offensive side of the ball and what Charlie Weiss Jr. is capable of doing. But until we see it with our own eyes, we're all going to have questions.
Yeah. And I mean, of course, you guys have heard this. Like, you guys have had previous luck with portal quarterbacks coming.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. Yeah, we're hoping that Sam Levitt is the next portal quarterback that takes us to the top. We'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. So which LSU player is poised for a breakout season, in your opinion?
Ooh, that's tough. I feel like we have quite a few, if I'm being completely honest with you. I would probably say if I had to pick anyone, it's Jackson Harris, who's a wide receiver. He is really, like, coming out of spring, everyone was talking about him. He was a 4-star Stanford commit. He had 49 catches, 963 yards, and 12 touchdowns at Hawaii last season. So he ended up going to Hawaii and transferred, obviously, to LSU. I think if there's one thing that Lane's offense tends to do really well, it's highlight really good wide receivers. And
yeah,
this might be a hot take. I personally think that the wide receivers, actually, it's not a hot take. It's a fact. The wide receivers that come out of LSU are historically significantly better than the wide receivers that have come out of Ole Miss. So Lane was putting guys in positions to be really well known at a university that is not known for producing wide receivers. Whereas there is not a Sunday in the NFL that you are not watching a game that a former LSU wide receiver is not making an insane play. It's just what, even when we haven't had good quarterbacks, we've produced legendary wide receivers. It's just who we are as a university. So I really think Jackson Harris being in a Charlie Weiss Jr. offensive scheme with Lane's, offensive playmaking and play calling abilities, I really expect Jackson Harris to have a very big year.
Yeah, I like it. I like the take. I like everything about it. Absolutely. And with that, which transfer, either at LSU or somewhere else in the SEC, could have the biggest impact?
Okay, I'm going to go LSU. I know LSU the best, and it's just what I feel the most comfortable in. And I'm going to go Ty Benefield. He is a safety that transferred from Boise State. Last year, he had 107 tackles, 2 interceptions, and 3 pass breakups. And I'm sitting here going, that was at Boise State. Like, what's he going to do now that he's basically under the godfather of DBU, which is Corey Raymond, and a guy that's produced more, I believe he's produced more DBs in the NFL than any other corner safety coach in the history of college football. And so I think Ty Benefield, if he was doing that at Boise State, I can imagine how much better he's going to get in the offseason and in fall camp with Corey Raymond guiding him as a coach. I also think Blake Baker as the defensive coordinator is going to put his safeties in the best position to be successful. And one thing I really like about Blake Baker, and I don't know if it's really ever talked about enough, was his ability. He's never is too comfortable to make a change when he feels like a player needs it. And you saw that a lot with Harold Perkins. And I understand that Harold Perkins, to most, would consider him a big disappointment. He had a breakout year, I believe his freshman year when we played Arkansas. We all called that the Harold Perkins game because he single-handedly won that game for us. And then you watched him get hurt, and then you watched him come back into the fold, and there was a lot of moving him around and trying to figure out where he was best because he wasn't a true position player. He was kind of this hybrid guy, but he was the best athlete on the field. And so Blake Baker was always trying to put Harold Perkins in a position to be the best that he can be. And I think a coach that's willing to do things, that's not scared of making changes and that's not scared of trying out new things, will only ever benefit a player that's already proven to be very, very good. And so I think Ty Benefield is really set for a breakout year.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Absolutely. Sounds like it could be a really big impact on LSU's team for sure. And then this might sound silly, but I'm going to label it as SEC. Which coach in the SEC has the most pressure entering this year?
Shane Beamer. Zero doubt about it. I don't really even have to think about that one. I think Shane Beamer's in this really interesting spot where you heard a lot about him last offseason because there was all the hype on Lenora Sellers. Last year was supposed to be South Carolina's year. And their offensive line was so bad that Lenora Sellers couldn't do anything. Right. And so you were able to retain him from what Shane Beamer said, which you take everything that every coach in the SEC says with a grain of salt. But there was obviously tampering. People were trying to get Lenora Sellers into the portal, get him to go to their university. Whether that's true or not, you were able to retain him and also keep him from going to the NFL, which, if I'm honest with you, I wasn't overly thrilled with this year's quarterback class. So I'm sitting here going okay, Lenora Sellers really probably could go. I'm not saying he's going to be a first-round draft pick, but he's going to be decently high just because of the lack of quarterbacks that there are. and you were able to keep him there. If Shane Beamer does not figure out a way to get his quarterback more time, because it's not like Lenore Sellers can't run. He's dangerous on the ground. It's what makes him so good.
Yeah.
But he had zero time in the pocket, and he was always planning an escape route versus actually being able to develop and wait on plays to work. And so there are such high expectations, not just for Lenore Sellers, but for South Carolina because he's returning. And let's be honest, like, Shane Beamer hasn't done a whole lot.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so they've obviously showed that they're invested in your program. They have spent a ton of money in the offseason to expand your stadium. They're investing in football. And I think their athletic director is at a spot where, okay, we've given you everything that you need to be successful. Like, what are you going to do with it? And I think if he doesn't perform at a high level this year, it could get real ugly for Shane Beamer.
I totally agree. I definitely think there's a tremendous amount of pressure on Shane Beamer for all of the reasons you gave. Like, you have your quarterback coming back. You have a department that is sorry. Totally lost my word. That'll be edited. You have is obviously investing in football. And so you have a lot working for you. And if he can't capitalize on his quarterback coming back, I don't see it working out very well.
I mean, respectfully, Brian Kelly had his quarterback coming back and got fired because they weren't winning games. And Brian Kelly was owed a whole lot more than Shane Beamer's owed. So it's at some point, like, I think the whole discussion about, like, well, we don't have the money to pay their buyouts, like, that conversation's over. It's null and void at this point. Like, especially if you want to be competitive in the SEC, where you have two of our universities, one being mine and the other being A&M, paying asinine contracts out because you're not winning.
Yeah.
You don't have a choice, South Carolina. You're either going to, like, step up, or you're going to quickly become a Vanderbilt or a Kentucky of this conference. And that never works out well for anybody.
Absolutely. Exactly. Yeah, the money conversation doesn't really work in modern college football anymore, especially in a conference like at the SEC.
Yeah, no. You either are going to spend your money and you are going to compete at a high level, or you're not going to have a job for very long.
Exactly. And in your opinion, what's the biggest game on LSU's schedule?
Okay, I'm gonna go A&M for a couple reasons.
Yeah.
Number one, I fear it's being overlooked because it's the week after Ole Miss. So everyone is talking about LSU Ole Miss, and no one's talking about LSU A&M. And there's some emotion in that game, obviously. Like, we don't really like A&M. They don't really like us. They beat us one time in Death Valley since they joined the conference in 2012, and it started, like, calling it Kyle Field East. I'm like, that's not really how that works, but okay. They obviously are poised to be pretty good. They didn't lose that much. They got another team that has their quarterback coming back next year. And they love nothing more. The only thing they like more than beating us is beating Texas. And they don't ever do that. So we're the next best thing. And so I get worried about the emotional aspect of that game, being it following Ole Miss. You're always worried about a hangover.
Yes.
I'll be honest, I worry about Lane's capacity to deal with that back-to-back. I don't know how many similar situations he's been in his career. And I think A&M is the game that Brian Kelly got embarrassed in so badly that they fired him. So there's and you're playing, you get the benefit because of the 9-game SEC schedule. You get the benefit of having them at home again this year. So you get them in Death Valley back-to-back years. So it's imperative that for your program that you beat A&M week 4. And so, yeah, everyone's talking about LSU Ole Miss, and a lot of people are talking about LSU Texas. I think it's naive, and I'm frankly a little bit nervous about LSU A&M just because of where it lies on that schedule. It's a tricky game.
That's a tricky position to be on your schedule. I wholeheartedly agree with you. That would be the one that I would keep my eye on. I don't think I personally realized it was the week after Ole
Yeah,
Miss.
I don't think a lot of people do, and and
Yeah.
I understand the hyperfixation on LSU Ole Miss.
Yeah.
I get it. I
Right.
really really do. But I was asked on a podcast probably like 3 or 4 months ago which game I'd rather win, and I said A&M, and
Yeah.
like everyone was like, "What?" And I'm like, respectfully, like one day, I don't know when, but one day this Lane stuff's gonna die down. Like
Yeah.
Ole Miss might never get over it, but like we're already like, he's our coach. Have a good day. Like enjoy Pete. Also a Louisiana guy. You're welcome. Like we're all kind of just like, okay, it is what it is with Ole Miss, and LSU and Ole Miss have never liked each other. Like that's never been a secret. So them not liking us isn't abnormal in our world.
Right.
But I need us to beat A&M because of the standard that we have in our program with victories over them. That needs to be of the utmost importance. And I don't know that people are thinking about it that way. I just hope Lane is.
No, I agree with you. That would be the one circled on my calendar as well, for
Yeah.
sure. Which team is flying under the radar in the conference?
Oklahoma.
Yeah,
Like,
let's hear.
no, I was watching SEC Media Days this morning. Brent Venables was the first guy to speak today, and someone asked him like, your first year, like you didn't do really well, and then last year you dominated, and this year, there's really high expectations. And he was like, from who? He was like, every list I see has us in the bottom of the SEC. Which I'm like, I don't know if that's entirely true because like Kentucky and Vanderbilt still exist, but I can understand like you being annoyed that everyone's talking about Texas and everyone's talking about Georgia and people are still talking about Alabama. And
Right.
honestly, like people are talking about LSU and don't know jack diddly about that roster. Like,
Right.
and he's over here going like, I got my quarterback back, and I'm a defensive guy. And I'm sitting, and then they interviewed John Mateer, and they were like, what's the biggest difference that you've had in this offseason? And he was like, I actually learned how to become a good quarterback. He said, I was a good thrower and I was a great athlete, but playing the position of quarterback is completely different than being a good thrower and a good athlete. I'm like, amen. Hallelujah. Like I, as a LSU fan that's watched atrocious quarterback play of guys that could really throw the ball.
Yeah.
I understand that. And so I'm sitting here going like, if the work that they've been doing in the off season is, translates onto the field, Oklahoma could be insanely dangerous. I think you're going to see really early on what they're built of. They go to Michigan week 2. Now, obviously, we don't really know anything about Michigan either, not to digress off the SEC, but like but I expect Michigan's always going to be physical. It's a home game. They're going to be loud. It's going to be an intimidating environment. You're going to see pretty early on what Oklahoma's made of. But I have high expectations for Oklahoma, maybe higher than most. But I think they're really going under the radar and they're due and set up for a breakout year.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're totally right. There are certain teams that absolutely dominate storylines and headlines, and we're used to those being like the Georgia, the Alabama, the Texas for sure. LSU's been thrown in the mix as well because of the offseason. Haven't heard a lot about Oklahoma. In fact, this came up in a conversation on social media a few months ago where I brought up the fact that Oklahoma has a returning quarterback with another year under his belt and an offseason of development. Like, why aren't we talking about this more? And there was quite a few people that are like, that's just John Mateer. Like, that's just Oklahoma. And I'm like, but this seems like something that they could easily capitalize on.
Correct. People just aren't. I think Oklahoma is not shiny. Like, they're not a shiny, flashy program. They're not someone that they don't draw in the clicks. They don't draw in the emotions. Like, for the most part, their fan base is pretty chill. Well, it depends on who you ask. Don't ask Maggie; she'll say otherwise. But or any Texas fan. I should clarify heavily. But for the most part, like Oklahoma's not a shiny toy. LSU is shiny right now because of Lane. Georgia is shiny right now because their trophies. Alabama is shiny right now because of their trophies and their history. Texas is shiny right now because of Arch Manning and honestly, their name and their history. Oklahoma doesn't have any of that. So they're not a sparkly team that the media wants to hype up because it doesn't really, there's no real benefit to doing that. But those are the teams that's Indiana for you. And look what they did.
Exactly. So well said. So what's one SEC storyline you think deserves more attention?
Ooh, SEC storyline. Okay, this one is gonna I think if any LSU fans are listening to this, it's probably gonna shock some people, but I'm gonna roll with it anyway. I actually think Kentucky's offense is gonna be halfway decent. And that's coming from someone that hates their offensive coordinator and Joe Sloan. But I don't think they're decent because of Joe Sloan. I think they're decent because of Will Stein. I think their head coach plays a bigger role in their offense than maybe anyone's giving them credit for. And I think that was almost validated today when Will Stein took the podium at SEC Media Days, because he was asked about Joe Sloan and what he was excited about with him being the OC. And there was heavy conversation about how good Joe Sloan is working with quarterbacks, not how good of an offensive coordinator Joe Sloan was. So, right. and I can validate the quarterback conversation because Jaden Daniels was a part of a Joe Sloan run offense. Right. So I think that if Will Stein does things the way that I feel like he kind of portrayed it to be, Joe Sloan will be heavily involved in the quarterback play and Will Stein will be heavily involved in the offense. Maybe similar to how Lane and Charlie Weiss work really closely together, and Charlie really runs the offense, but Lane has a lot of say in what his quarterback's doing. I could see them taking a similar approach. And if they do that, I actually think that Kentucky's offense could be enjoyable to watch for the first time in a very long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I, for one, am really curious and interested and even excited to kind of see how Will Stein's first year at Kentucky goes.
Same. Me and you both. I think it could be fun if
it might be the first time in a long time, if ever, that I pay closer attention to Kentucky football.
Yeah, LSU is at Kentucky this year. And okay. I always said Kentucky is one of the only SEC stadiums I haven't been to, but I said I'm not going to go until there's a game I'm actually invested in. And then when they hired Joe Sloan, I was like, you can't pay me to go watch that offense. But now that LSU is going to Kentucky, I'm going to mark that one off the list this season and, go watch a Charlie Weiss Jr. offense. Yeah. And I'm like, but when I found out Kentucky hired Joe Sloan, I was like, have I not paid my dues? Have I not had to watch this man coach an offense enough? I got to go. If I want to mark off the stadium, I have to watch that again. So Thank God LSU they're on the schedule this year. Thank the Lord.
Exciting. That's exciting that you'll get to see a new stadium too. Is there a national narrative about the SEC that you think is misunderstood?
I don't know if there's anything that's misunderstood. I would say that if there's maybe one thing that I could say, it's that our commissioner is really loud and about a lot of different topics. And I would say that for the most part, he speaks on behalf of the conference, but not the entire thing. And I keep referring to Media Days. It's obviously the first day. It's very heavily on my mind and all minds of SEC fans. And it's the first, taste we're about to get of college football. And so we're all very heavily tuned into what's going on. And he wasn't asked, he brought it up this morning about how the SEC has transitioned to a 9-game SEC schedule and how he literally said verbatim, I believe that the coaches and the universities are all on board and believe that this is the best thing for our conference. And immediately my antenna went up because I know for a fact that my coach is not on board with that. Lane Kiffin has been one of, if not the most vocal about not wanting to go to a 9-game SEC schedule. And then Eli Drinkwitz was being interviewed on SEC Now, and he said, I agree. I think Lane was right the whole time, and we never should have gone to a 9-game SEC schedule, and this is insane. And then you're seeing this, it literally broke probably an hour before that we've canceled a home and home we had scheduled with Arizona because there is no longer a benefit to playing these really potentially hard games not on your regular schedule when you know that you're probably going to have a more difficult game that you're required to have. Plus we have to play a Power 4, but there's nothing stopping the rest of the SEC from going to find the bottom barrel,
Yeah.
Big 10 team or the bottom barrel Big 12 team and playing them. Like, that's what they're going to do because it makes their schedule easier to navigate. And so I think that while Greg Sankey really puts out this united front narrative that we are all on board with a 9-game SEC schedule, that's just not accurate. And if there was a narrative that I could push back on, like if I was sitting with him at a table, that's the narrative I would push back on. And that I think a lot more people than he would ever consider are also pushing back on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I always love the communicative contradictions at media days. Like commissioner says something, then coaches immediately say something.
Yeah, he got up there and said that, and I was like, he just said that with a straight face too. Like he really thought he ate right there. And I'm like, meanwhile, we're all like, what are you talking about? None of us are on board with this. And he's talking about expanded playoff. He's like, I want to listen to the fans. I care about their opinion. No, you don't. You didn't ask us about 12. You're not. It's very clear if you would just pay attention to 1 ounce of your fan base that no one wants more playoff teams. Absolutely no one. In fact, half of us don't even like where we're at right now.
Right.
But you need to put out this front like we're all on board. And I would say that the majority of us are on board with a decent amount of topics that he dares to discuss publicly.
Yeah, no, totally. Okay, so now we're going to do the lightning round. So,
okay, love it.
Yeah, super excited for your takes. This will obviously be quick, the lightning round. So, SEC champion.
Georgia.
LSU record prediction.
9-3.
Yep. Dark horse team.
Oklahoma.
Breakout player.
Red Morgan, the defensive back at Alabama.
Okay. Biggest surprise.
Kentucky.
Biggest disappointment.
South Carolina.
Best game on the SEC schedule.
Texas versus Texas A&M.
Yes. College football playoff teams from the SEC.
Texas, Georgia, Alabama, LSU.
One bold prediction.
Kentucky's offense will be pretty good.
I love it.
I feel like I touched on all of those just in our generic conversation.
I know you did, but put your final, mic drop, your moment.
Exactly. I would like to, if there's an asterisk on one of the college football playoff teams in the SEC that I could put like the asterisk by, it is my own. So I'm not fully confident that LSU makes it. I am fully confident that Texas, Georgia, and Bama all make it.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I love this. I love you. This is so much fun. You have me so excited for college football. Tell people where they can find you and your brand.
I love you, Em. Thanks for having me. This was so fun. The brand is SEC Pretty, the brand on literally everything, secpretty.com if you want to shop. And all of my socials are Dailey Joy, Dailey, Joy on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. That's pretty much it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joy. Also, you have the best name ever.
Oh my gosh. Thanks, Emily, for having me. Love you.